Class, please come to order. Professor Hagrid is on a special assignment from Dumbledore, so he has asked me to cover this section of fourth years today. And our topic is house elves, which formerly were just called elves until they were enslaved. And so if you would open your book to page 41. Do you have, everyone have their text, The Fantastical Beast? Okay. Someone has inadvertently used evil magic to erase that section from my book. So I have prepared a series of magic lantern slides that will cover the topic. So I want to explain how we will conduct class today. Our subject is elves, and my enchanted quill will be taking roll while I prepare, and I will lead the discussion and ask you a series of questions. As fourth years, you should know that each house is eligible for points. For a correct answer, I've set up a score sheet, and the magic quill will take the scores down if you answer correctly. But please, when you answer, please give your name and your house so that you get proper credit for your answer. Okay, are there any questions about how we will proceed? Okay, based on your knowledge, here's question 1. Who can give me a definition of house elf? House elf. What is a house elf? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Emily. I'm a Gryffindor, and house elves are magical creatures made for service who are loyal to their house and bound to that house for service.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Yes. The quill has recorded. Okay, so we'll review. House elves are diminutive creatures about the size of goblins. We know from Dumbledore that wizards took control of house elves at some point. Their magic is limited, partly since they do not possess wands. They must ask permission from their masters to perform any magic. Most house elves work for the older wizarding families, yet the ownership of those elves is purely optional. It's not required. Many house elves are mistreated by their masters, unfortunately, except for those, of course, employed here at Hogwarts School of Wizardry and Witchcraft. Now, comparing house elves to other known creatures. Believe it or not, when I was out in the common area, there was a small shop, and they were selling house elf dolls. And this, of course, does anyone recognize this? Which elf this one is? Okay, we lost points there. Please raise your hand. One of the things that you'll notice is that they have pointy ears and nose and are dressed in shabby clothes. And in fact, I wouldn't call a dirty pillowcase clothes. And there must be some spew people about, because on another table out in the lobby, I found a tea towel. Now, you can imagine trying to wear a tea towel, not proper clothing, but we'll talk about the efforts of spew a little later. Okay. Now, how do they compare with something like the Brooks Brothers look of Gringotts goblins? Much different. Not sartorially dressed, not the diminutive size of something like a pixie. However, literature shows us other parallels as well. Who recognizes this creature and from what source? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lauren. I'm in Slytherin, and he is a dwarf, I believe, from the Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Very good. And his name is Gollum. Okay? Okay. Now, what struck me too is that there are sometimes house elves that appear similar in appearance to Muggles. And I have a favorite Muggle, one of my favorite Muggles, is this man, and he looks surprisingly like Gollum and Dobby. The same baldness, thinness, wearing a simple loincloth for clothing. So it's not uncommon to see that look in our population. Okay. Facts to remember. Please get your quills out. It's time to take some notes. House elves can live to be 100 years old. This is my personal favorite. Anyone know this name? Yes, sir.
David from Hufflepuff, that's clearly Creature.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Next fact. Though wandless, elves possess powerful magic, including apparition. And I particularly like apparition, so I built an apparition feature into my Magic Lantern slides. So Dobby is just the first of these images to appear and disappear. House elves are also fiercely loyal to their masters, oftentimes or sometimes giving up their life. Here is Dobby getting his freedom from that famous horror, Harry Potter, that Professor Rowling has written a biography about that's very popular. And Dobby has just gotten his freedom, and Lucius Malfoy is particularly angry and is about to use a Crucius curse against Harry, and Dobby prevents that from happening. But sadly, and this is a spoiler alert if you haven't read the books yet, it eventually cost Dobby his life. There are some named house elves here. I have a question for you all in red. Can you give me a fact about each of these house elves? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Maria. I'm a Gryffindor. One fact about Creature was that he was closest to Cornelius Artemis Black, who was seriously his younger brother, and sent him into a deep touch.
Okay. Can I get a fact about another one? Yes, ma'am.
Emily, I'm Gryffindor, and Winky has a very problem.
Yes. Butterbeard, to be exact. Anyone else? Another? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Beth, I'm Ravenclaw. Loki belongs to Pesky Smith, and when Voldemort killed Pesky Smith, Loki was accused of murder.
Very good. And your house again?
That's like Ravenclaw.
Okay. Now it's time to talk a little bit about spew. And the first thing I'd like to talk about, though, is the irony of the image in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. It's a doormat. Does anyone find that ironic or disturbing in any way? Yes. House elves who are downtrodden and slave-like servants of wizards and witches, the plea to free them is in fact written on, emblematically, on us as we literally walk all over them. Sorry. Okay, so our three questions. What does SPEW stand for? Yes, Ms. Perez.
My name is Tanya, I'm from Ravenclaw. SPEW stands for the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare.
Very good. A lot of people get that wrong. Okay, and do you know any of the other members of the wizarding community while Hermione was a student who joined SPEW? There were at least 3 that joined somewhat reluctantly, but they did join. Yes, ma'am.
Maria Gryffindor, I think was it?
I'm not certain about Luna. Yes, ma'am.
Part of the Ravenclaw and Ron Weasley joins the team.
Yes? And?
Lauren Slytherin, Harry.
Yes, very good. Very good. We have a close race here. Okay, and then finally, do you know the dictionary definition of spew? Yes, ma'am.
That's Ravenclaw, basically, throw up or throw out.
Or vomit.
Yeah.
Vomit, right. As in, what's up, Chuck? And your house? Ravenclaw. Very good. Okay. Now, so there's their logo. Here's another disturbing image. Can you identify what this represents? Yes, David.
David, Hufflepuff, those are the heads of the house elves who used to serve the Black family's number 12 Grimaldi place.
Yes, and why are they mounted?
They are mounted because they died in service.
Points possible here.
That's Ravenclaw, basically when they were no longer useful.
Okay, let's take it to a fine point. When they were no longer able to carry a tea tray, they were beheaded, and those heads were mounted. Lovely thought. Okay, parchments are due, and owls are coming. So I want to give you some advice about some resources that are out there that are not as reliable as you might hope. First of all, you probably are aware of a Muggle invention called motion pictures. It has other names, movies, cinema, and so on, talkies even in the early days. But one of the dangers of not reading the text is that the films are different. You must read the original text to adequately prepare for your owls. For citations on your parchments, when I read a parchment, I will know whether you have based your observation on the film or on the book, because there are serious places where they are different. Now, to highlight that idea of differences, there's a point question up there on what changes were made between the books and the films that specifically involved house elves. We keep getting the same people. Yes, you give me one. There's 3 or 4 at least, so give me one.
Well, they only include,
Name and
Lorraine and Gryffindor.
okay.
They only include Dobby, Richard, and the films.
Yes. Those are the only 2 named house elves in the films. Another one, David.
Hufflepuff, in the movies, it is Neville who finds the room requirements rather than having Dobby focus.
Yes.
And it is Neville who tells Harry to use Gillyweed rather than Dobby.
And in fact gives it to him in place of Dobby giving it to him in the books. Very good. In fact, that's going to be a double point. Okay. Now, the other evil lurking out there is on this medium that you probably are also familiar with, referred to as the net or the internet. And I think net is a better, because it will ensnare you with misinformation. Avoid fan fiction. Can someone tell me briefly what they understand fan fiction to be? Yes, ma'am.
Maria Gryffindor. Fan fiction is like when you take a canon text and you alter it to reach a certain point that you, the writer, want or you assume other readers will want.
Yes. Now I have looked at I researched the topic of house elves in fan fiction, and I found 5 parchments that were done on house elves. And all of them, if I had a flame here, I would deposit these in the flame, are worthless. They are juvenile attempts to rewrite the canon and do a bad job of it. 2 of them tend to demonize Hermione. One for going down into the kitchens and eating food in the early morning, when she said she would never go to the kitchens. And the other has her lurking behind the back of Malfoy's wife. And so it looks like she may be doing something dastardly with Malfoy. Okay, so please, please, please ignore this on the internet and do not substitute that for your research. You must read the basic texts. So here again is the reinforcement. I was not sure if people would get this, but David did a good job here of identifying both gillyweed and the room of requirement. But those were originally done by Dobby in the books. And my question here for points is, why does Neville need enhancement? Okay.
Well, because
Name.
In the books, because there's more time and space to have character development, when in the end Neville like comes into who he is as a person and wizard, it's not as big of a like we've been able to watch him transform, whereas in the movies they prefer him to slay and become a great wizard in the end. They kind of have to throw in some slight
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Can I give a book? I'm not leader. Can I give a book answer?
Sure.
Neville, Matthew Lewis would be a lot cheaper to shoot, I would imagine, than a scene with that.
Interesting. Interesting, too. Okay, one of the things that I was thinking, at least for the gillyweed, is that Neville is portrayed as a master of herbology. And so he would be one of the few people that would know the use of gillyweed. Yes.
We are also told at the end of that book, when the big Mad-Eye professors, he says that he, big Mad-Eye put that book with Neville.
Okay. Very tight race here. Slytherin needs to buck up. Okay. All right, so I just want to review. Professor Hagrid, I think, has already given you these topics, but he asked me to review them again. So the first suggested topic for your parchment for this quarter is compare the plight of house elves to that of Africans brought to America in bondage. Definitely a thoughtful question. Second, compare Hermione Granger's formation of Spew to the early days of the feminist movement. Okay. And then finally, what would be an equitable way to improve the status of house elves at the present time? Obviously, Hermione's efforts with Spew did not work. They in fact resented her leaving items of clothing out in the Gryffindor common room, and in fact refused to clean the common room, except for Dobby. Dobby had to come and clean the common room for Gryffindor because the other elves resented it, Hermione's efforts. And I don't know whether she was putting out actual articles of clothing or whether she was putting out pillowcases and tea towels. Okay, now, and another reminder, any other topics you don't, if you feel you can't do your parchment on one of those 3 topics, you do have the option of choosing your own topic, but you do need your instructor's approval for that change of topic. Are there any questions about that assignment? Yeah. Okay. Class dismissed. I didn't give you the final scores, sorry. Ravensclaw, 5, Hufflepuff, 5, Slytherin, 2, and Gryffindor, even though I'm a Gryffindor, it was the magic quill that kept score, 6. So Gryffindor won.